Schaeffer says, despite claims of cultural relevance, an accommodating evangelism also leaves the destructive surrounding culture increasingly unchallenged. Now, I would say to all of my evangelical brothers and sisters, I think that what we are doing is born out of a very good intention. I do not judge motives. I think they are, as we say, stellar. The idea that you want to reach as many people for Christ, that is a good thing, all right? So I don't think it's a matter of motive. I think we have not been as critical of ourselves as we ought to be when it comes to trying to determine what we should do in our evangelism. So consider, as I say, the state of the world in general. I'm now using the world there in terms of not the globe, but as John uses the word, you know, the ideas, the worldviews of culture. That naturalism is the general perception of reality. So we can go back to your comment about are we practical atheists. Sometimes I think we're practical naturalists as well. You know, Schaeffer said, he says he was, I think they were walking in the mountains, the Swiss Alps one day. I think this is the context. But anyway, his wife Edith was with him, and he said to her, I wonder, Edith, what would happen if tomorrow morning the church woke up and found out that the Holy Spirit had been removed? And he said, I don't think it would make a big difference. And I'm sorry, but I think he's probably right, that we have not seen the role of the Holy Spirit, which is another lecture, which we won't do here. But we are living in this, where naturalism is the perception of reality. We have terribly disordering values. Is it the discussion that we had just before we started this section, right? The disordering of values. And I would then say there's a replacement. Now, I'm just making a statement at this point. I'm not making an argument, of course. But values have replaced virtues. And the church has seen that is to be insignificant. I would argue it is terribly significant. Think for a moment. Somebody says, oh, I think we need to return to family values. That's language we hear most of the time. And I'm saying, oh yeah, that's really great. Family values depend on what you think a family is. Family values are relative. Virtues are not. Read the medievals. They talk about virtues, not values. Now, where did we get this notion of values? We didn't get it from reading the Bible. You say, don't be so nitpicky. It's only a word. Oh, we're right. It's only a word with significance. Because values and virtues are not signaling the same thing. And because this has happened, everything in our society needs to begin with a calculation with a great economic calculator. Now, it's not just, let me first say, it's not just in the church. Will not get political at this point, though I have at points. Notice what has happened in the recent discussion of what happened in Crimea. I'm not getting into the right and the wrong, all that. I have my own opinions there. But notice that when we decided, or the larger community decided, what will we do to what was perceived as Russian aggression? And when they thought about putting economic sanctions, immediately there were some countries that said, no, we can't do that because it will hurt our economy. Everything today is calculated by the great economic calculator. Now, do economics matter? Well, enormously, of course. But as Christians, they cannot be the final criteria by which we determine what we are going to do and what we are not going to do. And yet, it so often does seem to be the case. The implausibility of God, I have already spoken about that, how pluralism has leveled much of the culture, resulting in one belief not being any more important than other beliefs. So remember, I'm thinking, why is it that we have good answers but nobody's listening? Because they don't see that our beliefs are any better than their beliefs. Because their general thought about beliefs is that one doesn't exist above another. There is this leveling effect that has, as I've indicated, that then the sacred is abandoned. And I would think that we even see some of that in evangelicalism. And there seems to be nothing that stands above something else worth our sacrifice. If all ideas are equal, why sacrifice for your idea? And if you're not willing to sacrifice for your idea, then you don't have a great interest or investment in your idea. We have done what we can do, I think, in many cases, in evangelicalism, is to make us look as acceptable to the world as we possibly can. We don't want people coming to our services feeling uncomfortable. And I don't suggest that we do things intentionally to make people feel uncomfortable. But the fact of the matter is, our message is. We think about, am I willing as a parent to believe that that social media, let's just say, certain aspects of it, that I'm not going to purchase an iPad for my 3-year-old. Okay, I'm not going to do that. Well, yeah, but when they go to kindergarten, the other 3-year-olds, they do have one. Isn't your 3-year-old going to feel rather put up? That's just part, folks, of us reordering our lives. And that is what's going to call, right now, that's what is calling for the sacrifice, to be somewhat different. I remember I was in a Eastern European country, and I was invited to go to this particular church, and as the preacher, was a good preacher, young man, and I thought to myself, he's a really young man, I'd like to know something about him. And I was told that his dad was a pastor under communism, and was often taken in interrogation, wasn't home, in the jail, etc. And I'm thinking to myself, why in the world would a young person who grew up with a daddy spend much of his time in prison why in the world would he want to be a preacher? And then it dawned on me. Because it showed that young person that the beliefs of Christianity were really worth even dying for. If we don't have that notion, I think that's one reason that the world is not listening to us. Because they don't see that sense in us. It's no sacrifice for you to tumble out of bed at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning and grab your Bible and go to church. In fact, the world doesn't even care that you do that. But it is quite a thing for you to stand up, to order your life, your family life, your church life, in a way that reflects that you live according to a different standard, that you see that certain things are not neutral. They are, in fact. They carry with them something. So when you and I speak of our beliefs, there's no reason for anybody or for culture to think that our beliefs are superior to other beliefs, and we can make good arguments, right, that God is there. But if there is no existential, by that there is no change that comes into our lives because of this, then the world has a right to ask, so what makes your belief superior to mine? Freedom today is becoming absolute. Choices for the sake of choices. We're free because we have so many choices. And I don't quote Zengati Ta, who has written a book, Mediated Reality. He's not a Christian, but it's a very eye-opening book on this very subject. We feel that we've got to give everybody choices, right? Our children have got a multiplicity of choices. What do you want to do? You want to be in this sports, that sports, this sports, all of these. So we've got the family who's terribly busy today, but because we've bought into the cultural notion, you've got to have a lot of choices, because that's how we demonstrate our freedom. Now, the state of the church, I think, is where we need to focus, and I would say there is a sense of loss of community. I think there are some churches that are honestly seeking to bring that back. It's interesting to me that we're doing it by program, when it seems to me it should be the normal outflow of teaching of the Bible. So I guess I should be happy that at least it's being done, even if it's done by program. But it tends to be so artificial when it's done that way. We have bought into the acceptance of convenience and efficiency. So, this is what we can do. We can have my home church. I don't really like having to drive in the traffic and all on Sunday morning. So why don't you just beam the message into a building in my church, in my city, or in my part of the city, and that way I could just go down there and I can come in with my coffee and I can come in with my sandals and maybe in my pajamas if I want to, because after all it doesn't really much matter, and this is just church, and it's really nothing, and I need to be comfortable when I get there, and so I don't need to have to dress up. It doesn't have to be any real big issue. And I'm saying, so what have we lost? What do we lose? Well, information is the same. There's no doubt about that. But as I've said earlier, the people who sit in front of face-to-face teaching are not getting precisely the same thing as those who are watching it. Now, on a flat screen, you say, well, aren't you kind of defeating your purpose that you're having this recorded? And I say, well, there's a place for it. Don't misunderstand me. But I'm wondering if we're not trying to substitute too much because we think there is nothing lost in the doing of it. But it is efficient and it's convenient. There's no doubt about that. The uncritical use of social media. I know some churches that are now counseling by Facebook. Doesn't that just strike us as being strange? But it's efficient and it is convenient. So why would we think that people would want to be sacrificed to reorder their lives? I note here that studies reveal that young people claim that they leave the church after attending university because of the conflict between faith and science. But I think that reveals a more serious and systemic problem, namely that they don't understand properly either. Now, the nature of our message, and this is where I come to this idea that we buy into progress through the back door. That is efficiency and convenience. But with it comes the notion that new is always preferred to the old. Now, the problem that creates for us is that what you and I have is a historic message, grounded in history. And so we take this historic message and we're proclaiming it, but we're proclaiming it in a community that is revealing an ethos of consumerism. Which one is going to have the strongest influence I will argue the ethos of consumerism will. If you go to the mall as you come under the spell of consumerism and you're with another person and you decide, oh boy, I just saw this, I need to have this. You didn't think you needed it before you got there, but now you need it. And somebody says to you, but that's probably not a good idea. But once you have been affected by the ethos of consumerism, I bet you'll still buy it, even though you may know that it won't be a very good choice. That's the power of the ethos of consumerism. So even if you are given the right message, if we aren't creating an ethos in the church with the ethos of the kingdom, we keep having this conflict. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's difficult for people to listen to our message. I say that the method and the message, we say that we're saying the same thing, but our methods have changed, and I think that reflects a misunderstanding. We've spoken to the matter of dividing our world into the sacred and the secular, and has been to say that everything is sacred. I think what we've overdone is that we've overstated our case. In fact, what's happened is everything's become secular. Because we didn't understand what Schaeffer was talking about when he said there's no distinction between the sacred and the secular. Now everything actually becomes secular. It doesn't matter. Now I'm probably a little bit on the edge on this, okay? So I'll admit that. I'm an old man, and I lived at a different time, came into existence personally just shortly after the Earth's crust turned hard. So yeah, I've got some baggage. I don't deny it. But does your costume, your clothes, does it say anything? I would say, yeah, it does. Students will argue with me and say, no, it doesn't. It doesn't really much matter. I say, oh, it doesn't, okay? I said, suppose tomorrow morning I come to class to teach metaphysics, but I'm going to come in a pink tutu with a bow in my hair. How shall that go? Well, I said, what the difference does it make? Well, it would be saying something about you. I thought you just told me that it doesn't say anything. That costumes don't say anything about the person or the event. Well, in fact, it really does. I think we've been kind of blind to all those things. I don't mean that everybody's got to come to church in a tuxedo or anything like that. And I don't even think people have to come, come in coat and tie. But I do think that if we think that we are coming together with something really special, something unique, there ought to be something about the way we present ourselves when we come together with the church that it says, yeah, I think this is special. I think that this is unique. There's a great debate on that, but because I'm teaching, I can say it, and you can think the guy's crazy, and that's okay. Just please don't broadcast it. The heart of Christ, the mind of the world, I think that they're two in opposition. There's the antithesis that Schaeffer and Kuyper both spoke of. I think that's melting in our world. That the church, the world doesn't see a real sharp distinction. They hear our message, that's a distinction. But it's broadcast, it's proclaimed in an environment that has the same ethos as the world in which they live. So that now the person in the church looks more like a consumer than a worshiper. That the gospel looks more like a product than it is a message of how one has relationship with God. We talk about, our market share as Christians. These are B people, these are A people. I know what we're doing, but I'm just wondering if we're not being unwise in some of that. We tell young people, you must change the world. What a hideous notion. What young person or group of young persons could possibly bear the burden of changing the world? Now, what you can do is make a difference. The first order of our lives is not to change the world. It's to be faithful to Christ. The last word I would say is this. I think that people intuitively move towards that which demands sacrifice and commitment. I really do. I think we're wrong-headed psychologically thinking, well, you just come to Jesus, it's not going to require much of you. I think that's wrong-headed. D. Martin Lloyd-Jones said that a long time ago, and much better than I. But I do think we need to think about that. Do we want to make it as easy as possible? I don't mean we put things in the way, necessarily, but that it seems to me Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. We need to know at what point is it that we need to demonstrate that our beliefs do make a difference, and then be willing to live out those beliefs before a watching world. And I do think it will create, or cause, sacrifice.